Alrighty, today we are going to be talking about Dokkan releases who were dead on arrival. Now, some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the term, but for those of you who are not, maybe you're just new to gacha games in general, dead on arrival is basically what it sounds like, right? A unit that did not have any release or like utility, usefulness, resourcefulness on release. Now, in the case of some of these characters, there is going to be a bit of a redemption arc for them, thankfully, whether it be their EZA or an event comes out that they were designed for that wasn't at the time. These things can always happen in the game. And keep in mind, my opinion may differ from yours as well. But you never know what you're going to get with Dokkan, and I think that's the beauty of it, right? Sometimes releases are going to be amazing. Sometimes they're going to age really well. Sometimes they're going to need an event for them to really be useful for. Sometimes we can see like the philosophy of the character after the things have been out for a while and things like that. So just keep that in mind. And just because I think a unit is dead on revival doesn't mean that you may think the same thing. It's just how it goes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little historical lesson, if you will, today. And let's go ahead and look at some of the dead on arrival releases of Dokkan while we're in sort of a little bit of a dry period while we wait for the new red zone. So let's go ahead and get started with the first character, and that is going to be the EZA. I'm going to cheat a little bit for the first one. The EZA for Int Goku Black. Now, if we look at the base version of the card here, essentially what this guy was a stacker, right? Greatly stacking defense is something that it can be extremely valuable in Dokkan, but it's not always going to be the case, right? Sometimes it's not enough, but most of the times it will be. So where you were really seeing the value of this character in April of 2019 was the Legendary Goku event. So this was the hardest event in the game during the 2019 era, and essentially what that was definitely a different take on the long content than what we see now, because these days we're used to things like the Festival of Battles where, the runs are going 60 to 70 to 80 turns, whatever it may be for each player. And this was... it's really tough to say because I didn't really play this event in its prime. Obviously, I knew about it, and I think I did play it like a little bit back in 2019. I was kind of on and off with the game at that time. But it was a tough fight, right? Like you would have to spend multiple turns in the Goku phases, and then the STR UI Goku phase in specific would nullify your dodging. So dodging was very tricky. And I'm sure a lot of you remember the number one unit in the game for that event, especially at the time, was the LR Kale and Caulifla unit. But this Goku Black is potentially where you saw that. So what we saw initially with this character was he did not have like the craziest buffs. It was just attack 140. Then we had some extra crit, and then he would transform from the 6th turn when your HP was 80% or more. So right off the bat, when we see Rose Goku Black, who has the art of this character is really, really good. But you see here, we have this version of Goku Black who's in Rose. He's pretty good, right? He's giving key 3, which, doesn't seem like a lot these days, but 3 key can really be valuable in a lot of different instances. Then we also see extra crit chance right here. This guy as well was also a defensive stacker, so you could really get him up high defensively, but his EZA, if we look at it right here, was nowhere near as good as it needed to be. And there was actually a campaign on social media that the players were going for, I believe was hashtag buff Goku Black. That is what people were trying to do. Again, the HP condition was a little better this time, 60% or more from the 4th turn. Pretty easy to get to for turn 4 rather than turn 6. The difference between turn 4 and turn 6 in Dokkan is all of the difference, right? 5 turns, there's a lot of fights that go 5 turns. And turn 6, if you can't transform, it's the same thing for an active skill. It's the same thing for a transformation condition. You do not like seeing turn 6 really at all in this game. Unless we're talking about something like the Festival of Battles or like, a modern red zone stage, you don't want to see turn 6. So that was the case here with this Goku Black. If you want to say that his base was good on release, like you can go ahead and say that. And he was also extremely hype, but I am cheating and talking about the EZA. So please keep that in mind. But let's move on to the next character that I want to talk about, and that is going to be Dirty Fireworks Vegeta. Now, I know what you guys are thinking before we even get into this, right? Vilify, he was good. He's good in the Festival of Battles. While I agree with you, there is one small issue, right? He came out in October of 2024. The Festival of Battles, I believe, debuted at the end of February into March of 2025. So this character sat in limbo for almost half a year, where it's just like, what is the purpose of this character, right? Namek Saga wasn't a good team. Gifted Warriors was not a great team. Inhuman Deeds is obviously a good team now, but it wasn't when it came out. was mainly a Broly setup. So if we look at Inhuman Deeds now, you guys can see there are a ton of buffs that have been given to this team recently, right? Like look at this top row right here. This is all from this cut right here from Zamasu Goku onwards. This is all like the last since July, right? But then when we come down here and we look at Inhuman Deeds before that, right, prior, we see right here, it's like we have this cut right here, and it was all just a Broly team. So this Vegeta doesn't really fit on a Broly team, and there's probably just going to be better characters you can run on the Broly setups anyway. So you have this sort of conundrum here where it's like the teams for him aren't great and things like that. Then you have some good stuff in this kit right here, and he also could stack, right? Which was very nice. But the problem is when he came out in the events that like were, tied to him, stacking was not that useful. Right? We think about the hardest fights in October of 2024. Everybody was talking about the memorial fights against Gogeta and Janemba, right? Those were really the tricky fights in the game. Some of the Supreme Magnificent Battle stages, things like that, the Goku and Frieza fight. And this guy really just didn't have a home anywhere. So on release, this guy just didn't have anything going for him. But then we got the Festival of Battles, and then we really found a nice home for him. So in this case, there is some redemption. But let's move on to one that, I don't know. This character, I don't know if y'all are going to agree with this, but I'm just going to go with it. Reps of U7, our boy Kaio-ken Blue Goku, was just not good from when he came out, and it really put a hindrance on 2025 Dokkan as a whole. This could be a whole nother video, so if you guys want to see that, let me know down below. We could talk about 2025 Dokkan. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say a lot more positive than I'm going to say negative in that video, just to be brutally honest with you. But this guy, certainly I can understand the frustration when it comes to like this specific release. I think that this guy ended up being a little bit of an issue for Dokkan, right? Because of the fact that he just was not good enough. And Golden Week is sort of like that big bridge after Saiyan Day all the way up until about the summer with Tanabata. So we go from the end of or the beginning of March, which is the end of the anniversary. Then we have Saiyan Day 2 weeks later. And usually that's a pretty hype character. This year it was not. Then we get to Golden Week, a dual Dokkan Fest. Last year, we saw Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Majin Buu. Very good releases. People were extremely excited about them. They were very, very good. And then this year, we got this, right? Hit was very good, but this Blue Goku was just nowhere near as good as he needed to be. This right here, I think, really sort of worked against him. I really don't think in 2025, I understand, like, you want to have immersion with the Kaio-ken, but not at the cost of the user's HP. I just don't think that is a smart unit design. Just really didn't think this character hit on its mark for what like we intended to have. And again, sacrificing the HP, having orb changing is very nice, right? Being able to revive is very good. So technically he did have a little bit of a utility, so it might be a bit of a stretch here, but certainly I think this character should have been a whole lot better, and he really could have helped kind of carry the spring for Dokkan in 2025. It took all the way up until GDC for players to get excited again. Next up, we are staying on the tune of Blue Goku. I really just did not... was not really a fan of this guy. He was an attack stacker, and then he could exchange into Vegeta. Just didn't really think they were good enough when they came out. This celebration was just kind of mid, but LR Golden Frieza was very good, right, for short form content. Having Rainbow Orb changing is nice. There was a little bit of a utility there, the one-turn raise. Just when we look at the exchange here from the fourth turn, very nice. Just was not a fan of this unit. I think this character, when we get an update for it as like a tag character, is going to be extremely good for the game. Again, because we're just going to have access to a lot of teams, and I think another stab at this unit will be very good for the game, but we'll have to wait and see. You guys know how Dokkan is. Sometimes, like, we think we have everything under control, and then boom, you get hit with something and you just don't know. So I thought that this unit really wasn't the best, but let's go ahead and move on to the next character here on the list, which is going to be AGL Trunks. Now, I talk about this guy a lot on shorts, and it's interesting, right? With this character, he has one of the unique things in this game that not many characters have, and that is you don't want to transform with him, right? We think about characters like God Goku. We think about that's a character you don't really want to transform with, and this Trunks was like the oldest one I could go back and think about that I was like, yeah, you don't want to transform with this character. And if we look at this AGL Trunks here, you're just losing a couple things, right? You're heavily relying on there being certain category allies, right? With the Android/Cell Saga, which is not a great team, especially right now. And then we look right here, the enemy has to be debuffed, right, in order to get extra attacks. So there's just no defensive gimmicks in here whatsoever other than being able to stun the enemy, but that does not help the character in slot 1. But if we go back here and we look at Trunks, it's the additional attack, the other chances right here, and then every time we get this, we have the additionals. So we have the defensive raises, and then we also have the additionals here that we are losing access to when we transform into this Vegeta or to this Trunks right here, right? So it's a very tricky spot. You have no additionals here, right? We do have a defensive raise, which is nice, but really no defensive raises in the passive aside from having 12 or more key, which is not that hard to get with the TUR most of the time at least. And I just didn't really like this character from the jump. I thought he was okay in something like Super Battle Road, but really did not find myself using this character very often. Next up, let's talk about the boy, TEQ Hit. This guy was just not good on release. He was a global first, and this ended up being a common theme in the future that the releases that were tied to global first ended up being mid, and this guy certainly did not help global's case. We saw like STR Kaio-ken Blue Goku and stuff like that. He was not very good. This Hit was a global first. He wasn't the best, so just keep that in mind. I think STR UI was a good global first, but thankfully with the sync, this issue is no longer a problem, so just keep that in mind. I just didn't think this character had enough going for him. We needed the stun for him to really be good, right? Effective against all types and things like that. No defense or attack raise on super is never a good sign. This character didn't have an active scale. He didn't have a transformation. He was very, very cookie cutter. Universe 6 wasn't really the best team at the time. So just keep that in mind for the end of 2018. This character was certainly not good. Last but not least, let's talk about the boy. Everybody knew he was coming, right? And I know some of you aren't going to like this because he has a cult following on my channel for some reason, but Raditz. The boy Raditz. Now, this guy is infamous, right? I'm sure if you are somebody who watches my content regularly, you know all about Raditz. But if you're somebody who is new, then that gives us an excuse to talk about him. The boy Raditz. He was the second release outside of the third, actually. Yeah, so he was April 2022. So Saiyan Day had already passed, right? Can I look at the JP server here while I'm here? What if we go right here, right? I can see the release if we just do this. Yeah, here we go. So he came out April 1st, 2022, right? So after Saiyan Day, after Ginyu came out, after the 7th anniversary, he was, for all intents and purposes, not good, right? Just not a good release. He didn't have high offense. He didn't have high defense. He had an AoE, so the devs were scared to give him like crazy offensive potential, and he just did not have enough, right? We look at his super attack effects, not horrible, right? Not the worst we've ever seen. But really what it comes down to me, is we get a critical hit within the turn when you're up against two enemies. So in like Super Battle Road, after receiving an attack. So to get a crit, you have to put him in slot 1 against two enemies. So what does that mean you have to do in order to get a crit with this character? If you want to put him in slot 1, it means you are forced, without a shadow of a doubt, you have to use items, or you have to be with type advantage and a domain active and 80% support going and all of those things, so he does not just lose all of his HP from a slot 1 attack. So those are things working against the character. And then, and only after you deliver a final blow, which is one of the worst mechanics in Dokkan just because of how hard it can be to do, and if it's an important part of a unit's kit, that definitely does not work in their favor, you were rewarded with a whopping E+2. And didn't really need it. So this guy just had no offense. He didn't have defense. He didn't have gimmicks. There was nothing about this character aside from a meme that really led to this character being anything other than just a long-running joke. And in turn, he has been known as Raditz and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. I think Raditz, I am actually really rooting for this EZA to be really good. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But you never know, and you got to root for these types of things. So hopefully Raditz does end up getting his EZA and ends up being really good. He is 3 years and 5 months old on JP, so you never know. So there we have it. How many was that? 7 Dokkan units who were dead on arrival. Some of the worst characters that they've ever released, but again, some of them have had decent EZAs. Actually, yeah. So like this hit had a decent EZA. I believe these guys have chance, especially during the current celebration we're in as of when I'm recording this video. These guys have a chance to be an extremely good EZA. Then we also have characters like Dirty Fireworks Vegeta, who ended up having a really good role in a very hard event for most players. And then, you know, there's some other things. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know down below who other units that you think are dead on release and stuff like that. I hope you enjoyed this one. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you were new. Shout out to all my members over on the YouTube side of things. I appreciate you greatly. And I'll see you all in the next one.